Radagon is a bit headache-inducing, it must be said. Trying to make sense of his part in Elden Ring's lore is the embodiment of hammering a square peg into a round hole. Despite this, I think I managed it, with some frayed edges and a sore wrist, but hey. This video is going to discuss Elden Ring's lore. Regular viewers of my channel will want to strap in and brace yourselves. Elden Ring enjoyers will probably want to do the same, especially based on the comments in my last video. I went to do some research to confirm some thoughts, and I came back not only with answers to questions I didn't even realise I had, but also questions about things I didn't even know I didn't know about. So, with that said, let's start with Radagon, the annoying Mother Hubbard. His story starts as a hero in the army, fighting the sorcerers of Liurnia. Then he becomes a general in the army, and ends the Second War by marrying Renala, Queen of Liurnia. He has several children with her, but then God Queen Marika calls him up to be her husband, so Radagon divorces Renala, because of course you would, look at her. Marika and Radagon have a bunch of children together, including Mesmer, more on that in a bit. Then, after one child tries to burn the Erd Tree down, and another commits unlife on herself and another demigod, Radagon tries to stop his wife from destroying the world.
Tale as old as time.
A lot of these events are set in stone, and well known to the Elden Ring lore enjoyers. It's in the specifics that problems and questions arise. One that flummoxed a few people and even got VudiVidya to make an almost snarky comment on was Melina's recital of Marika's words.
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both, mine other self.
Elden Ring states that Radagon, the warrior of the Golden Army, was also Marika, the god queen of the lands between. One of the clarifications I needed was, when did Marika become Radagon in relation to Godfrey, her first husband, leaving? This speech appears to show the moment when this happened, when Marika, addressing the individual Radagon, decides to join with him to become that one person. But then we have the bit about being shattered, which would put this moment way too late in the narrative. And then Marika calls him her other self, which means Radagon was Marika already, and she was talking to herself? Yeah, this speech causes problems. Thanks to it being so confusing and so unhelpful, I think it can be ignored, especially when we take into account the other evidence. According to the Tortoise Pope in Manus Cellus, Radagon left Renala after Godfrey left Marika, or more correctly, Marika got rid of Godfrey. So Radagon and Marika must have conjoined after Radagon had become a hero, a general, and a husband and father for the first time. But there are a few issues with that. The golden sewing needle, which is designed to alter demigod attire, was given to Renala by Radagon. Why does Radagon have a demigod's sewing needle? This could be waved off as him getting hold of something really awesome for his wife from one of the demigods. It could, if not for a few things which are known by everyone, yet ignored when discussing the whole Radagon-Marika situation. Radagon's children, with Renala, are demigods. One of them is even an Empyrean. Was an Empyrean, I should say. well, maybe people born of mortal parents can become demigods too, somehow inexplicably, with absolutely no evidence to support that claim. Alright, then how do you explain Radagon giving Renala one of the great runes of the Elden Ring centuries or even millennia before Marika smashes it? The only explanation is that Marika was Radagon from the start. As Radagon, Marika brought a demigod's sewing needle as a wedding gift to Renala. She gave Renala demigod children, and when Marika/Radagon left Renala, she gave her, as a parting gift, a great rune straight from the Elden Ring that only Marika would have had access to. All of these things are godly acts made by a god. The god transformed into a man named Radagon. Honestly, it's not unlike how a certain Greek god would turn himself into all sorts of things to have it off with mortal women. So we know Marika was Radagon, and this goes into what I talked about in my previous video. In fact, it actually goes further than I suggested. I thought Marika kicked Godfrey out, then tried out being a man. Now it turns out, no, Marika became Radagon whilst still married to Godfrey. So the narrative now goes like this. Marika marries the warrior Godfrey, and he wins all the wars for her. Then he loses his spirit, so Marika decides to try being the man of the house. When she's incredibly successful at it, which of course she would be, she's a bloody god, she kicks Godfrey out the house and pretends to marry Radagon, aka herself. So it's not even that she got rid of a useless husband and out of desperation became trans to fill the void he left. She became trans just to try it out, and liked it, apparently. So what of Radagon being his own separate personality, having his own thoughts and goals, to the point he tries to fix the Elden Ring when Marika is trying to destroy it? Rather than Radagon starting out as an individual who is then absorbed by Marika, as I rather horrendously illustrated in my previous video, I now think it's a case of divergent personalities, developing into multiple personality syndrome. This is actually something I suggested they do with the She-Hulk series, but they never did. Idiots. This idea is reinforced by one of Marika's speeches.
In Marika's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
Marika is clearly interested in examining her faith in a more intellectual manner, but is rebuked by her own people. Perhaps by disguising herself as someone else, Marika can do what she as herself could not. This is what Radagon ends up doing, going so far as to create the intellect and faith-based fundamentalism that characterizes his spells and his talismans. This is interpreted by many in the game as wrong, as creating impurities in the world. Goldmask, for instance, after learning the truth about Radagon and Marika, creates a great rune that surrounds the Elden Ring, protecting it from interference. And Miquella sheds his own body, including the flaming red hair that characterizes his twin sister, so as to purify himself and become unalloyed gold, as he puts it. He then goes on to marry his half-brother and declares he wants to make a world full of love for all people by brainwashing all people. Yeah, Mikola is a bit messed up. Speaking of children, let's talk about Mesmer. Someone said he was Godfrey's son, not Radagon's. Now, this is countered in a roundabout way by the description of Mesmer's flame. Honestly, we don't even need to go that far. Mesmer is 100% Marika's son. He also has red hair. You can't get around that one. FYI, Mesmer's flame states that Mesmer had a vision of fire like his younger sister. The sister isn't named, but considering this must have been a daughter of Marika and Radagon, and Melania has nothing to do with fire, this must be referring to Melina, all but confirming her demigod status. Or that is until another DLC comes out and retcons this interpretation. Until then, this also all but confirms Melina as the gloam-eyed queen who tried to burn down the Erd tree, causing the rune of death to be removed from the Elden Ring, which would later allow the Night of Black Knives to take place. And on that note, I wanted to make a suggestion. Before the general consensus was that Melina was a daughter of Marika and the gloam-eyed queen, people thought she was related to Ranni in some way because of the mark across her eye, similar to that of Ranni's. I would like to suggest that they are still related, in that Melina was killed in a similar way to Ranni. Both ended up burned, bodiless, and with a mark over one eye. Ranni was prepared for this situation and had a doll body ready to go. Melina perhaps was not, so became permanently disembodied and disorientated to the point she lost her memory. Perhaps Malekith, rather than killing Melina in combat, was ordered to execute her after their fight, only for Marika to change her mind halfway through. This led to Melina dying only in body, and gave Ranni inspiration for her plot, who knows how much later in the narrative. I have no solid evidence for this, it's just a thought. And one more thing regards the children of the gods. Morgott and Mohg are of the golden lineage, aka they are Marika and Godfrey's children. So why do their names start with M? Godwyn, Godefroy and Godric all start with G. Radagon and Renala's children's names all start with R. And Marika and Radagon's children's names all start with M. So why are Morgott and Mohg named so? Seriously, anyone know? This question isn't just to plumb the depths of any potential viewer's Elden Ring lore knowledge. This is also me pointing out how contrived a lot of the Elden Ring lore is. The reason I thought Mesmer was Radagon and Marika's child was because of his name. That turned out to be a correct assumption, but then Morgott and Mohg threw me off with no explanation. So much about Elden Ring's lore is analysed to great detail by so many, only for details to change, be ignored, or expanded upon at the expense of everything else. This is why I've said in response to commenters that their narrative is as good as mine. Even if it is quote-unquote correct, who knows what will be in the future after another detail is discovered, or another DLC retcons something. Before I end this video, I want to talk about the other inspirations for my previous Elden Ring video. The first was a Native American tale about a woman who accidentally married a snake. Just from that description, this story sounds wild. Why I bring it up now is because there's a line that went something like, "Her skin was smooth and unblemished, having never known the touch of water." I found this hilarious because we are potentially learning someone's hundreds or even thousands of years old opinion on having baths. The second and less savoury inspiration is some anti-trans rhetoric that goes, trans people aren't actually trans, they are brainwashed as children to think they are trans. This is an idea I originally heard in an anti-vaxxer video posted to Twitter. And if you're wondering why anti-trans commentary is in an anti-vaxxer video, let's be honest, if you're crazy enough to be an anti-vaxxer, then you're crazy enough to be anti-trans too. I haven't thought about this rhetoric for literally years, until that disturbing finger titty man quest. Realising this man, in his vulnerable mental state, was influenced into becoming a man-mother, made me think of the theory of children being brainwashed into thinking they were trans. I hope I'm getting my point across here. By adding their opinion about washing into an otherwise unrelated story, a storyteller from who knows how long ago is having their subjective and potentially negative opinion shared and passed down through the ages. Add this idea not only to the specific anti-trans rhetoric I associated with the finger titty quest, but the grander narrative of Marika and Radagon, and I think it's clear why I decided to make my Elden Ring's anti-trans narrative video. Worse, Elden Ring's narrative is such a mess, it's easy to make assumptions where there otherwise shouldn't be any, making interpretations like this more than possible. Either the makers of Elden Ring are deliberately making an attempt to sneak in these dangerous thoughts on human rights in modern society into their game, or they made a story influenced by these ideas and didn't really do a good enough job at showing how bad these ideas are. Or perhaps I'm overreaching even further than I thought I was. Any which way, I think it's something interesting to talk about. Don't you think?